joined by Tony Rovira, Managing Director of Azure Minerals. Tony, thanks for your time.
David, pleasure.
2020 was an interesting year for a lot of people in the exploration game, none more so than Azure, who moved focus into the West Australian market. Can you tell us about what you did from an acquisition point of view in 2020?
Certainly. When we realised that operating in Mexico in March, April, May of last year was going to be very difficult due to COVID, the company made the decision that we would pivot our exploration focus back into Western Australia. And we looked at who would have some projects in Western Australia that we could look to acquire. And Mark Creasy sprang to mind, and so we approached Mark, and we've got a very long-term relationship with Mark Creasy, and he's had some projects that were in his portfolio that he was looking to find a home for. And so we were able to come to an agreement in around July, middle of last year. And we were able to enter into joint ventures on 4 different projects. So one of them is the Andover Nickel project, which is now a 60-40 JV, so a 60% Azure, 40% Creasy. And there's 3 gold projects, which are all 70-30 joint ventures, with Azure being the majority owner. And it's just full steam ahead, particularly on the nickel project now, which is looking really positive.
Clearly Mark has a big portfolio of projects. What drew your attention to these ones in particular?
Well, in that period leading into the middle of last year, it was obvious that nickel and copper were 2 commodities that, due to the new generation metals and batteries and things like that, nickel and copper were going to be very much in demand. So we wanted to have a good nickel and copper project. In addition to that, gold is always a great asset to be exploring for. So I approached Mark and asked him specifically about whether he had any gold and nickel projects for sale or to divest. And he has held the nickel project for probably 15 years and had done a fair bit of exploration and had some success in terms of finding nickel and copper sulfide mineralisation. And he obviously felt that the time was right to vend that project into Azure. And in exchange, of course, he took a large piece of our company in terms of the payment in shares. But that particular Andover project has been in his portfolio for, as I said, about 15 years, and many companies had approached him looking to acquire it in some way, and he had said no to all of them, and then he said yes to us. So in that respect, I think we're very fortunate.
And were you able to get on the ground in 2020 to start kicking the rocks, so to speak, on those projects?
Absolutely we were, and thankfully travel restrictions were lifted around about July of last year, and we were able to get to and do some due diligence on the ground. The deal was signed in late July. We were on the ground in August doing geophysical surveys, and we've been carrying out surface and downhole geophysical surveys pretty well ever since. In addition to that, we started drilling, diamond drilling, on some targets in October of last year, and we've definitely been drilling ever since on that. We had 1 rig for the remainder of 2020, and we've got 3 rigs drilling now, probably throughout 2021.
So touching on 2021, drilling obviously a key element of it. What should investors look for as markers of success or markers of news flow over this year?
The beauty of this project, and I might talk a bit about this for a couple of minutes, is that the work that Mark Creasy had done over the last decade and a half had identified 2 quite interesting areas where he'd put a couple of drill holes in and he'd hit some indications that there was nickel mineralisation there. We immediately followed up with some very detailed, deep-seeking, wide-ranging geophysical surveys, and we identified very strong bedrock-hosted conductors that indicated that there was nickel sulfide mineralisation at depth, underneath where he had drilled a couple of shallow holes. So we immediately started drilling deeper holes, and we got straight onto what we call the VC7 conductor. And VC7 is a zone of conductivity which is associated with sulfide mineralisation. It's over 1,000 metres long. It looks to be at least 200 metres from top to bottom. And to date, we've drilled 10 holes into that target, and all 10 have hit nickel sulfide mineralisation associated with the EM conductor. So at the moment, it's a 100% success rate drilling into that conductor. In addition to that, Creasy had also identified a second target which he had put 1 hole into, and he hit a sniff of nickel, And we've followed that up, and we recently announced that we've completed 7 holes into that target, and all 7 have hit more nickel and copper sulfide mineralisation. So at the moment we're batting pretty well 100% in terms of hitting the right stuff. And on top of that, elsewhere in the project area, there's at least another 8 to 10 good looking targets which have never been drilled, which if they too have nickel associated with them, well, this is just, it's mind boggling as to how good this project could be. But at the moment, we're full steam ahead. We're drilling the VC7 conductor with 2 rigs, and with the intention that we'll be in a position to complete a mineral resource hopefully before the end of this year. Because we're so confident about the quality and the potential of this mineralised system, we've also employed an engineer who's now come on as the project development manager, and so he'll be carrying out all the development studies in parallel with the resource drill out. So when the time that the resource is completed and announced, will be very soon after that we should be able to complete a scoping study.
And through the deal you picked up gold assets. What's the plan for those?
Yes, we picked up 3 gold assets from Creasy. We also acquired a 4th one, which is down near south of Leonora. 2 of them, there's one which is called Turner River, which is located right next door to De Grey's Malina project, where they've had their recent and quite sensational Hemi gold discovery. So we have some ground there, which is 450 square kilometres. At the moment, the 2 exploration licences are still in application, so we can't explore on it yet. I'm hopeful that it'll be granted by the middle of this year, and then we'll get started on that. The project that's down near Leonora and Kukaini is 200 square kilometres of land, which is in between 2 large million-ounce gold deposits, and this is on some 200 square kilometres that's hardly ever been touched. So once again, another very exciting gold project. So we're in a very strong position as far as our assets here in Australia goes. In Mexico, we have decided that we have put those projects on care and maintenance, and we recently announced that we're looking at undertaking a strategic review as to their future. There's been a lot of companies reaching out to us, particularly North American companies that are interested in assets in Mexico. So we're evaluating our options on those ones. But for now, or for going forward, we are Western Australia focused, and particularly on the nickel and the gold assets.
2 very popular commodities, strong news flow ahead in a jurisdiction that lets you get on the ground and do the work. Exciting times ahead for Azure. Tony, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.